Could they be the most famous weapon in all of sci-fi? Lightsabers have been involved in some iconic scenes in film and TV history, and they make absolutely no sense. As their name indicates, lightsabers aren't made of a solid, malleable material like real-life swords. Canonically, these weapons are made of plasma, a real-life state of matter that's assigned to things like lightning, neon, and fire. In the real world, plasma is a far more difficult element to contain than solids, liquids, or gases. But in the world of Star Wars, these particles have been controlled and refocused into the shape of a blade for combat purposes. In an article for Space.com, the U.S. Department of Energy's Don Lincoln proposed that a realistic counterpart to the lightsaber would be a saber of plasma, controlled and shaped by electromagnetic fields. However, he also pointed out that if two of these sabers were ever to come in contact with each other, they wouldn't collide like lightsabers, but instead pass through each other like air.
You are unwise to lower your defenses.
Any solid core added to this hypothetical weapon would have to be able to withstand the plasma at extreme temperatures, but such a core would also create more problems. The old Legends canon of Star Wars provides an in-universe explanation for this problem with the lightsaber's construction, explaining that the plasma of a lightsaber is contained by a force field. However, since such force fields are just another sci-fi trope, it's not a solution that checks out in the real world. Lightsabers are shown to be quite volatile in the Star Wars story. They're capable of easily severing limbs, such as when Luke Skywalker's hand is amputated by Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back. As a result of the intense heat from the weapon, these wounds are immediately cauterized. However, some Star Wars fans have theorized that a lightsaber should have much more extreme effects. In a 2017 episode of the Nerdist show Because Science, Kyle Hill analyzed the potential science behind a real-life lightsaber wound. He speculates that, because human bodies are comprised of roughly 60% water, the intense heat from the plasma would likely cause the body to implode in an instant, not dissimilar to the effect of a bomb. The fight between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader in A New Hope is the closest we ever get to this phenomenon in the movies. The in-universe explanation for Obi-Wan suddenly vanishing after Vader strikes him is that he becomes one with the Force, but his instant evaporation might actually be a more accurate depiction of what a death by lightsaber would look like. Lightsaber colors have gotten increasingly more complicated as the Star Wars franchise has continued. At the start, there were only two known lightsaber colors, blue and red, symbolizing the light and dark sides of the Force. This changed in Return of the Jedi, when Luke Skywalker debuted his custom green lightsaber. Since then, these three have remained the most frequent lightsaber colors across the galaxy. It wasn't until the prequel trilogy that a fourth color was introduced on film. Mace Windu's purple lightsaber was created by the request of Samuel L. Jackson, who wanted something to help his character stand out.
There's no purple left? You might get purple.
More recent Star Wars projects have showcased more lightsaber colors specific to certain characters, including Ahsoka Tano's dual white lightsabers in The Mandalorian and Star Wars Rebels, and Rey's yellow lightsaber in The Rise of Skywalker. However, if there are this many lightsaber colors out there, it begs the question of why we usually only see the main three. All Sith use red, of course, but for the Jedi, there really ought to be more diversity. There have been various in-universe explanations of how lightsaber colors come about, with some pertaining to the crystals used and others referencing the personality of the wielder. Whatever the reason, you'd think there'd be a lot more variety than just a select few special characters receiving distinctive hues. Canonically, a lightsaber's power is channeled through Kyber crystals, rare items in the Star Wars universe that possess incredible amounts of energy. Lightsabers also have batteries or power cells to help activate the crystals, which means that, like many other Star Wars weapons, they can run out of charge after frequent use. However, this rarely ever comes up as an issue in official Star Wars media. There are examples in old expanded universe novels where Jedi are put in crisis when their lightsabers power down in battle, which happens to even powerful Jedi like Mace Windu in the 2003 novel Shatterpoint. However, in the mainline movies and shows, it's not a risk that any Jedi or Sith ever really seem concerned about. Considering that batteries and power sources in Star Wars are advanced well beyond our own, it could be argued that the loss of a lightsaber's charge is just a highly rare occurrence. However, the discrepancy between mainline stories and extraneous material is still weird. Typically, lightsabers are only used by Force-sensitive characters. Those who aren't Force-sensitive, like Han Solo and Poe Dameron, tend to prefer blasters when it comes to combat. However, there are a few examples of characters who aren't Force-sensitive using lightsabers in the franchise. All Jedi carry lightsabers, but that doesn't mean that only Jedi can use them. Throughout the series, there have been various instances of regular people using lightsabers, at least temporarily. For instance, Finn uses a lightsaber briefly in battle in The Force Awakens, though he's since been confirmed outside of the films to be Force-sensitive. The inconsistency of non-Force-sensitive characters using lightsabers, despite not having any confirmed knowledge of how they work, dates back to The Empire Strikes Back, when Han Solo uses Luke's to slice open a tauntaun and keep Luke warm while stranded on Hoth.
I thought they smelled bad.
And then, of course, there's the Darksaber. which has been used by numerous non-Force sensitive characters over the years, from Pre Vizsla and Din Djarin to Moff Gideon and Sabine Wren. It seems to be canon that anyone can use a lightsaber, but only Force sensitive characters really keep them around. It would make sense to see more outlaws and bandits using stolen lightsabers in the franchise, as they're incredibly powerful weapons regardless of their wielder. Plus, in the wake of Order 66, there probably would have been a ton lost across the galaxy. Since the prequel trilogy, lightsaber duels have become a lot more flashy than they were in the original Star Wars films. Even though the prequels were still written and directed by George Lucas, the changes in choreography seem to go against what was established in the original trilogy. In an official Star Wars featurette, Mark Hamill even confirmed that Lucas told the original trilogy actors that lightsabers were supposed to be very heavy, requiring 2 hands to wield. Scientifically, this original concept for the lightsaber makes a lot of sense. A 2016 article by Amanda Stoller of the Electrochemical Society analyzed the practicality of lightsabers, explaining that it would require immense power to generate the heat necessary to cut through things like metal and bone so easily. Controlling so much energy would demand a lot of strength. And canon materials like Star Wars Rebels have confirmed that exact idea.
You're not fighting with a simple blade as much as you are directing a current of power.
For the most part, though, this rule has been ignored. Lightsabers are generally seen being wielded with lightness and ease, with some Jedi, like Ahsoka Tano, even dual-wielding them. The concept of a lightsaber's weight has been explored further with the Darksaber in The Mandalorian in the Book of Boba Fett, but overall, the matter is handled inconsistently within the canon. There are only a few types of material that lightsabers aren't able to pierce in the Star Wars universe. They can always be deflected by other lightsabers, and materials like armor weave and frick offer some resistance. But the most significant lightsaber-resistant material in the series is beskar. As depicted in The Mandalorian, beskar is a highly coveted alloy typically used in Mandalorian armor. Very few in the galaxy are able to forge with beskar, with the armor of the Children of the Watch being one of the exceptions. At several points in The Mandalorian, beskar is established to be able to resist both blaster bolts and lightsaber strikes, even though there's no metal on Earth that could resist a plasma weapon of such intense heat. It's also highly questionable how any armor in the galaxy is able to forge with beskar if all a lightsaber can do is mildly heat it. If beskar is truly immune to lightsaber strikes, then how is a mere forge able to melt it down to make it malleable? Given the importance Kyber crystals have for the creation of lightsabers, it makes sense that they have a strong connection to Force-sensitive people. In fact, the Force user bonds with the crystal, sometimes even before construction has begun on the weapon. This increases the effectiveness of the weapon in their hands. However, this begs the question of how multiple characters are able to utilize the same lightsaber. In the case of Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber, the weapon is taken by Obi-Wan Kenobi and passed down to Luke Skywalker in A New Hope. Luke later loses it in The Empire Strikes Back, but it's recovered and given to Rey in The Force Awakens. The iconic weapon is destroyed in The Last Jedi after Kylo Ren uses it to kill Supreme Leader Snoke, but it is reforged for the next movie before it is finally laid to rest in the sands of Tatooine. For those of you counting, that's several major characters who all use the weapon at different times, and that's without counting those who briefly use it like Finn or Han Solo. In canon explanations, a character's bond with their Kyber crystal influences their lightsaber's color, although an existing lightsaber doesn't typically change color depending on who wields it. The notion of force bonding with your own unique Kyber crystal is interesting, but it's never been explored in a consistent enough way to avoid confusion. Ever since Darth Vader brandished one in the original Star Wars, the red lightsaber has been synonymous with the dark side of the Force. The same color has been wielded by every major Sith character, from Darth Maul and Darth Sidious to less official Sith like Kylo Ren. For lightsabers to take on a red hue in canon, the Kyber crystal inside has to undergo a process known as bleeding, in which an individual pours all their negative emotions and feelings into the crystal. However, there are instances throughout the Legends timeline where Jedi are seen wielding red lightsabers. Even Luke Skywalker briefly wields a red lightsaber in various new and old Star Wars comics. While some of these instances are no longer considered canon in the universe, they do beg the question, how come there are no naturally occurring red lightsabers in canon when every other color seems prevalent? In canon sources, there are moments where Jedi use red lightsabers, but only temporarily. Before fully embracing the dark side of the Force, Anakin Skywalker uses a red lightsaber to execute Count Dooku, and Obi-Wan Kenobi briefly wields one in Star Wars The Clone Wars during a fight against Darth Maul. In other instances, characters who defect from the dark side like Asajj Ventress keep their red lightsabers. The Darksaber is one of the most famous and unique lightsabers in the entire Star Wars galaxy. After a long stint in animation, the blade made its live-action debut in The Mandalorian, where it's shown to be in the possession of Moff Gideon at the end of Season 1. Gideon later uses the weapon in a battle with Din Djarin, who successfully subdues the Imperial Warlord in the Season 2 finale. However, Din's possession of the Darksaber becomes a dilemma for fellow Mandalorian Bo-Katan Kryze, as Gideon reminds the two of them that the Darksaber is now rightfully Din's, and must be won in combat in order to legitimize Bo-Katan's Mandalorian rule.
I yield. It's yours.
Oh, no.
It doesn't work that way.
The lore surrounding the Darksaber is first introduced in the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. In Rebels, Sabine Wren finds the weapon but doesn't duel for it. The Mandalorian only makes the rule more confusing when Din loses the Darksaber briefly during Season 3. The creature that takes it is later defeated by Bo-Katan, and Din claims that this is enough of a reason to confirm that the Darksaber now belongs to her. However, long before any of this, Obi-Wan Kenobi defeated the Mandalorian Pre Vizsla, then owner of the Darksaber, in a duel. This defeat should have made Kenobi the rightful wielder of the Darksaber all along. During Maul's time with the blade, he's also defeated by Darth Sidious, making the whole lineage of who actually deserves the Darksaber quite confusing.